When I stood in the light, so I saw this bright white light, which I knew was source, and heard this beautiful music. And my thought was, I'm seeing angels. The music is coming from the angels, but I don't believe in angels. I was a complete atheist. I didn't believe in any of this. Right? I'm outside my body. I'm having this spiritual experience. What I'm experiencing, I'm saying, but I don't believe in it. I would be shown, an accident, or I would be shown, I would hear things, this relative is sick, or this, your dad is going to pass away. And I would get all this information ahead of time. I had access to past, present, and future all at the same time. Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Lotte Valentin on Superior Self, and I'm really excited to be back on this show again with Trey. And we're going to have some fun times and talk about a lot of not ordinary things.
Unordinary for the third time, the Trey time. You know that it's funny. I'm the third, right? So
Mhm.
this is going to be the this is going to be the three-peat of our continuing conversation. So thank you so much, Dr. Lottie, for taking the time.
Oh, my pleasure. My
You know, the
pleasure.
third one's always the charm, right? Like the third episode, like the third everything, the third downs here is going to be. I feel a good energy surrounding this conversation.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fun because we're going to get to talk about everything we haven't talked about yet. When
Sure.
at the beginning, when people interview me, it's mostly about the near-death experience and what was that like. But then people forget about, well, what happens
What
to
happens?
those people afterward, right? How does it
Yeah.
change you? And, what happens? Because we're so fascinated still by the actual experience that we forget what comes after they have that experience and how does that change those people?
Hmm. Yeah, did it change you much?
Yeah, it made me a different person.
Hmm.
So, people say, do you have a different soul now? Did somebody else step into your body? But I
Walk-ins.
definitely
I've been
don't,
hearing that.
right?
Yeah, walk-ins.
I definitely don't think so. It's more, for those that are familiar with Gabor Mate, there's an MD. He's written many books, super famous man. And he does a lot of trauma therapy and healing, and he speaks all over the world. But he always says, it's not what happens to you, it's what happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you. So, and that's so true, right? Because he works with trauma. So when things happen to people that have a traumatic event, well, how does that change them inside? But it's the same thing with when people have a near death experience, because usually those people are either dead or very close to death. And so it involves a traumatic experience, number one. But then also, many times you have some spiritual experience. And so you have a traumatic experience and you have a spiritual experience. And then, that is, of course, going to change the way you view the world, you see the world, and sometimes activate different abilities that were just lying latent that you might already have been born with these abilities, but they didn't surface until you had this traumatic experience.
And that was like that for you, right? Like you had these abilities that took place, right? Like can you see
Right.
people's auras or energies?
I used to when I was a child.
Yeah.
So, and that
So
came
that
out
went
when
away.
right. So then you suppress it because then you become a teenager and then it's just not cool to be that way. So you suppress all those things. And then you realize too, when you tell your friend, hey, can you see that color around, the flower or something? And I remember doing this and my friend would look at me and she's, no, what are you talking about? Right. So then now you can't get a validation for what it is that you're seeing or experiencing. So then right away, as a child, you're going to shut that down and say, okay, well, she can't see it. So it must not be there.
Hmm.
And I think that's really common because people who are born this way with these different abilities, number one, we all have the abilities. It's just that we haven't let them come out. But then when nobody believes you, we don't get validated. And so then we're like, okay, it must not be true what it is that I'm experiencing.
Sure.
Yeah.
No, that's oh man, that's so fascinating. Yeah, because it's not true if no one else can see it but me. And then if I say something, they're gonna lock me up.
Right.
Um, so have you, right, since you're near death, like what did you come back with? I mean, you developed like mediumship capabilities. through going back to, I think it was like a school in England, right? And
Hmm.
you developed those. What did you come back from the near death with?
So right after my first near-death experience, which was in the ER, and that next day, as I was still in the hospital, I heard my sister-in-law, and she had just passed away about 10 days earlier, and she said everything is going to be okay. And I'm thinking, I've lost my mind. Yesterday, I had this experience of leaving my body, and now I think I can hear my sister-in-law, right? So it was very difficult because I didn't have any of those beliefs, because I didn't believe in the afterworld. I didn't believe in angels. I didn't believe in the spirit world. And so it took me quite some time, it took me 12 years to develop the trust in that, and a lot of experiences along the way where I could hear the spirit world, or I would be shown, an accident, or I would hear things, this relative is sick, or your dad is going to pass away. And I would get all this information ahead of time. And that's when you really start questioning how much our life is predetermined. And I mean, these soul contracts, they seem pretty real at times when you get information about your future that has not yet happened, or somebody else's future, and then you wait for it to happen. And
Hmm.
so how much is predetermined of
I mean,
our.
exactly, right? Like, what does that mean? Like, I mean, if we have free will, like, what is free will if we have these soul contracts and you're able to predict the future? But I mean, is time like a big mechanism in that too? Like, is it just so diluted here to or slowed down to where we experience time, like in this obviously in linear fashion, where if you were to extract yourself from the matrix, like you were able to, and maybe time is totally different. So that way everything is happening, you always hear that proverbial time is now. However, we don't experience it that way for whatever reason. Maybe it's the veil, maybe it's our brains. We just kind of we create this reality totally different than on the other side. I don't know. I mean, you would know more than that, or more. You would
Right.
know more than me, right?
Well,
But
when
I mean,
I had the experience, I knew that there was no time on the other side. I had access to past, present, and future all at the same time.
really,
And yeah, and so that was my first near death experience. And I went through the entire San Francisco Public Library searching for anything that could give me any kind of understanding of what was that? Why did I have that experience? And I remember reading Stephen Hawking's book on, I think it was called Time something, and trying to figure out why can't anybody explain what that is, what I experienced. Right. But then I also knew that everything was interconnected, because I saw that like a net or a grid around the earth that had what I called a silvery, glittery fish net, because it was,
sure.
that was in 1992. We didn't have the internet. But now looking at that, Indra's net, have you ever heard of Indra's net?
No, but I think I looked it up last time that I think I saw a picture of it before.
Right. So it's the Indra's net where everything is connected, uh, you know, out there. There's no limits on the Indra's net, but at every node there's a jewel. But is every jewel that's looking at it. If you take one jewel, all the other images of the other jewels are in that one jewel. So
Hmm.
everything is connected, right? So every jewel has that, meaning that everything is reflected back. So every cell or every consciousness is a jewel. But so we are connected to all of that, which means that we're connected to each other. We're connected to everything that exists. We're connected to everybody in the spirit world, right? Because we are all, that is that quantum physics that the Nobel Prize winners last year in physics
Yeah.
proved, right? The
Local realism,
non-locality,
right?
right?
Local
Right.
realism is false.
Right, exactly. Because there
Mm.
is that interconnectedness so they proved that if you take two, a pair of atoms. So you got two pair of atoms. Then from each of those two pairs, you take one atom. Now they meet, but the two atoms that didn't meet out of that pair are also entangled because one of those pairs met.
Mm.
And so whatever happens to those are going to be affect the others. So whatever happens now to one of those atoms affect even the other atoms that never met. Right. So
Really?
even, yes, because and that's what they proved. So when you look at the way we are connected, right, we are connected to all of that. So what we do, what we say, what we think, all our actions, right, is going to affect other people. I always think of it as we all live on this big spider web. So if you're on one, you're over there, you're jumping up and down on the spider web. I'm like, stop that. You're affecting me over here. Right. Because we're all on this big Indra's net. We're all on this big spider web because we are connected through quantum physics, even though we have the illusion of being separate. Right. So we're here having this great earthly experience, which is just jumping over hurdles, an entire life of jumping over hurdles. Right. Because this is one obstacle after another that has to be solved and,
Hmm.
right, and dealt with. And that's supposedly how our soul grows from all these hurdles. But that is, what's really happening is just the way I look at it is just an illusion that we're separate because we have to have this experience. But really we are connected. And what you do and say is going to affect everybody, that especially all the people that like I look at it like the soul family. So your family, your grandparents, the family you came from, your own family that you have now, right? They're all connected. You've all met these people. Even if you never met your grandfather, he passed away before you were born, well, you're still connected to him, right? Because your grandma is still there, you're connected to her. She was connected to him, according to the Nobel Prize winners. So it doesn't matter, you didn't meet him. So when you look at it that way, it makes you understand how entangled we are with everything. And we're affected by all the things that are going on in the world, even if we don't live there,
Yeah. Do you think we're
right?
affected by our future selves?
By our future selves, meaning,
Like in the future? Like, do you think 2050 Trey or, well, yeah, 2050 Trey is, in the future doing things that are affecting me right now?
well, you could be, right? Because people talk about the multiverse and that parallel lives. Can your soul split off and have a fragment and you're actually living a life somewhere else in a different time period, even?
Is that the
Or
knowledge that you gained when you were in your NDE or out of body? Did you like, so you said you saw a lot, I think it was you saw all time, right? Could you see all dimensions too?
no, because that's all that I got on the first one was the that I had access to it, and then they saved me. I had to go
And they
back.
saved
All
me.
right, they saved me. So then that's why I joke that the second NDE was all they saved me too quickly. I didn't get the full effect, so I had to have another one so I could see the
So what,
light, see the grid, and
yeah.
get that understanding of that interconnectedness. But it takes so long to put the pieces together because that was in 1994. Didn't really put these pieces together until 2017, 2018, 2019. All of a sudden now I'm starting to see, we have the internet, you can Google things, you're getting information at a whole different level. Back then, I had to go to the library. What do you search on in the library? I saw a grid around the earth. I mean, I went through all different kinds of departments, could not find anything that could explain that.
Mhm.
So, it's very difficult to back then to find that information. And then all of a sudden, in 2013, I told my daughter the whole story because now she was in her 20s. And she looks at me, she goes, Mom, that what you're talking about is the grid. You can just Google that. It's on the internet. I'm like, you gotta be kidding. So all those, I just gave up, in the early 2000s. I said, all right, I can't find it. That's just how it is. I'm gonna put it to rest now. And then just didn't even search for it for many, many years. And then all of a sudden the internet was there. And now you can just Google grid around the earth, right? So it's
Yeah.
very different. So now we have that, we get the information in such a different way. So all those pieces are falling into place.
Well, I would call that intelligence, right? Like there's a computer intelligence, like an artificial intelligence that helps us, right? But what do you think the difference is between that intelligence and consciousness? Because there's these theories of like singularity theory where at some point technology and human consciousness will merge, right? Like AI, like you'll see it with the ability to develop like nanobots to go in the body. You may be able to implant some device in your brain that's hooked up to the link to the internet or whatever, and be able to people will be able to communicate or access data that way into from the system. Like, what are your thoughts on that? Like, what is the difference between intelligence and consciousness? And do you think together that we will be able to pursue, like, still pursue spirituality? I mean,
Right.
that's
So
a
there's
tough
a lot
question.
of
That's a
talk about,
deep
right?
question.
Yeah, there's a lot
Yeah.
of talk about that, right? The artificial intelligence. Now, I used to be a programmer. So in my youth, I was a programmer for IBM. And I can't, well, what I know is that the computer is only as intelligent as the person who programmed it, right? So there is a coder behind everything, including artificial intelligence. Somebody's making those products available. Somebody's coding it. But when you look at universal consciousness, consciousness in general, universal consciousness, we are more intelligent than any artificial intelligence, right? I don't think, I mean, I'm sure there's going to be all these developments, and some of it will be great, you know, treating different kinds of diseases and things like that. But ultimately, I think it's just us that needs to tap into our own abilities, because we use such a small percentage of our capacity or our abilities in a daily life, and we all have much greater abilities and tapping into that universal consciousness than we think we do.
Sure. So your
Yeah.
abilities now, like you do a lot of healing work. When you work with clients, do you get like a intuitive hit about what is the matter with them? Do they, I mean, is that obviously informed consent? They have to like essentially tell you what's going on and you have to tell them how you're gonna, obviously treat them. But do you have the ability to kind of know exactly what's going on with them and why?
Yes, sometimes. So, and I think it's so many times people show up on my screen and then they start talking about, I have all these allergies. Sometimes they just start sharing right away. I have allergies and I got all these digestive issues and blah, 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 blah. And then the spirit world tells me, well, they do, but the real problem is that they have endometriosis. So then I'll say, oh, okay, so I know we're talking about allergies and digestive issues and all this stuff, but the spirit world's telling me you have endometriosis. So has anybody ever told you that you had endometriosis, or did you have terrible periods, a lot of pain, and then they look at me and go, yeah, I did. I had surgery for that like 5 years ago. I'm like, okay, there it is. So it's still there. So then you know that all the things that are happening is related to that. So even when people tell me one thing, the spirit will sometimes tell me something completely opposite. And that's such a good example because it's happened several times. And it's not people, start talking about some completely different issue. And then I'm telling them no, that's not it. It's over here. Or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes it could be, sometimes it's they have all these different issues. Maybe they have a problem with their vision. They're going blind. And, all I hear the spirit world is it's trauma, it's ancestral, or it's trauma and ancestral. And so they're talking about, all these different things and the different medications and supplements and what they've done. And then, I say, okay, the spirit world tells me that you had a lot of trauma in your childhood. And then they look, yeah, I did. Okay. What is it that you didn't want to see in your childhood? And then all these, traumatic events show up. Because when you look at somebody, like all of our experiences that we have, right, in our own childhood, the way we're treated, the way we're seen or not seen, um, parents are arguing and maybe have physical abuse and all those different things, that's going to affect you, right? Because you're a human being. You want to feel safe and nurtured, and you're never feeling safe and nurtured. And then maybe there's some physical violence and you don't want to see that. You're just this little kid. So when you look at that, how does that then affect you physically, right? So people who are familiar with Gabor Mate's work, and when the body says no, they did a lot of research. Why do some people get this disease versus the rest of the people? And they got so good at it that, they could predict who was going to have a positive biopsy for cancer and who was not, just based on a questionnaire, how they dealt with their emotions. So we know, right? And we know from Bruce Lipton's work, he grew like bone cells, fat cell, muscle cells in petri dishes, and they grew different kinds of cells depending on the environment those petri dishes were in.
Mm-hmm.
So the environment is going to tell the petri, the cells in that petri dish to grow a muscle cell or a bone cell or a fat cell just from the environment they're in. Now
Epigenetics.
right? Think about what you're telling yourself or how you're handling your emotions, what you're saying, not saying. All of that is going to affect you,
No,
right? So what,
100%.
right? So
100%.
what, yeah. And what we think, what we do, what we say is going to affect the outcome, not only on a physical level, but also, what we see. Um, you know how they say like the slit experiment when the
Double
electrons go
slit.
through the slit,
Yeah.
right? And they
Observer.
don't,
Yeah.
they only go through that if you observe them. Otherwise, they're not there, right?
I wonder if it matters if it's a human observer. You know what I mean? Like, I mean, obviously
Right.
not, I guess, if the experiment is, I think it's just I guess it's not, I think it's a non-human observer. I think in the experiment, maybe just like a measurement of data, but like, I wonder if it gets different, like if there's an actual human observer. I don't know.
Yeah, I
Sorry.
think the human,
Side
yeah,
rant.
no, I think it has to be human observer because when we look at a particle, we impact that particle because we create, our expectations of what it is that we're going to see. It's like projected back to us based on our consciousness, right? So, yeah, it gets
Hmm.
complicated.
It
So,
does.
I mean, is the world real? Are we just living in
Oh,
this
here we
bubble,
go, Dr. Lottie. Oh man, that was right on
right?
my, that was like question 95 on my list here.
Right.
Is the world real? Like, do you think
Right.
it's real
I
or do
mean,
you
the
think
way I
it's
look
just a
at it is,
creation?
right, it's like we live in a video game. I swear to God, it's just, I mean, it seems like it at times because as we evolve, remember the Sonic and he had like the Sonic game, he has to collect his rings, and every time he collects the rings, it goes to a different level. It's like back in the 90s, this game when my kids were little. But I always think of that game. It's like when our consciousness, we resolve a problem, we jump over a hurdle. Great. Now you get this little gold star, you go to the next level. Okay, new problems, new obstacles to overcome. And then you solve those problems on that level, you get another gold ring or gold star, you go to the next level. I mean, life is pretty much like that
Yeah,
because
but
we
there's
go
also
through
a
a great,
boss. There's also a boss. Like, what is there a boss that we have to fight here? You know, like, I always think about that, right? Like, if life is a video game, let's be honest, you have to defeat someone to get to the next level.
well, you have to defeat someone or you have to jump over the hurdle, depending on how you look at it. So we have all these hurdles in our life that we have to overcome. Like you break your leg, and then that's a snag because now you can't do all the things you were planned to do. You have to overcome that hurdle. Or you lose your job. Now you don't. Now you got to figure out how to pay your bills. Another hurdle. Then something else happens. Now you're going through divorce. Another hurdle. You got to come out of that, stabilize yourself, go on with your life, maybe find a new partner, another hurdle. I mean, it's just life is just a row of hurdles that
So
we're just constantly jumping on.
a boss could be anything. Like we
Right.
always, as humans, as like, as a kid from the 90s, I think of bosses and bad guys as beings trying to take us down. But like a boss could be you losing your job, right? And how do you handle that?
Right.
How do you choose in that moment to really persevere? We are resilient. How do we keep going and stay positive and turn a negative into a positive? It seems like the more negative crap that happens, I'm always at the end of it, I'm always like saying to myself, it's a blessing in disguise. Like something usually positive, most of the time, something positive comes out of it.
Right. Even the worst moments. It's always like that when things fall
Even
away. I
if you
mean,
die, right, Dr.
right.
Lottie?
Yeah. I mean, exactly. So, I mean, I think on my third year in med school, it was such a crazy year. And I separated from my husband. My dog died. This is all within 12 months. So it's like I separated from my husband. My dog, they had to put a dog down. He was like, 16, 17, had a heart problem. So it was all happened at the same time. Then my brother-in-law passed away, and he was like a dad to me because I grew up in Sweden. So when I moved to the United States, my dad told my brother-in-law to look after me, and he got me the job at IBM. He worked at IBM. So he was kind of always that kind of father figure for me in this country. Then he passed away. Then I became a US citizen. That was in 2015. And then my cat passed away. Then my other cat passed away. So it was all these animals that had been around that the kids had grown up with. That, the kids move out, the animals typically stayed, had to stay with the parents. So they all passed away. Then my American uncle, as I call him, passed away. And he had actually married me and my husband. He was actually my husband's uncle, but I was really close to him because I'd known him since I was 17. So very close to him. And then my dad's best friend passed away that I had also grown up with. So when you're a little kid and say, if my dad dies, I wish he would be my dad, right? So very, very close to these people. We spent a lot of time together with their family. He passed away. And then my mother-in-law passed away in the fall. and she was my spiritual teacher here on earth. All that happened during my third year in medical school. I mean, it was
Wow.
just crazy. And it was just nonstop. I'm sure the teachers thought I was lying, saying I needed, to have a morning off to attend another funeral because it was just nonstop. But, and then I had a reading. It was my first time I had like a reading in astrology with this woman who's been studying astrology for, 40 years or something, knows it inside out. And so I told her about it, and she said, "Yeah, well, you can see it here in your chart. Look here, January. You can see here your separation with your husband started in April. It was a decision made in August and culminated in December. Yep, it's points right spot on. All these people passing away, it's opening other doors for you because you can't do. It's supposed to be this way. Like it was in the chart." Because otherwise, I would not be able to go down my path and do the things I came in to do in this life, and that had to be that separation, right? So even though my husband's mother was really my spiritual teacher and we're still friends, but we knew we had to part ways because I had grown in one direction and he grew in another direction, right? And it just didn't make sense anymore. But it was supposed to be that way because it's in the astrological chart. It says right there, you can see it. And
It
so it's
says
fascinating.
divorce. It
Right,
says
right. And
crossroads.
literally,
Yeah.
like it just like it has to do with a relationship, and she says that you can see it right here. And then somebody was looking at he's doing research on near-death experiences and astrological charts. And I can't remember his name, but I think he just published a book. And he asks all the people that have had near-death experiences because about your birthday, because he wants to see if it's in there. And he emailed me back and he said, "Yeah, your near death experiences, there are certain patterns I look for, and you have one of those patterns. And with your near death experiences," and he said, "You probably actually had a couple of more near death experiences, but you don't remember them. Because I can see it in the chart." And so it's just, fascinating. I'm sure, there was many times I had other things. And
Hmm.
the way I look at it is the spirit world just gives you this upgrade, like it's computer download, or, you have to update your computer.
Sure.
And when we're sleeping or we have near death experiences, or we meditate and, we get this update, like here's your next level software. Here you
Sure. Like
go.
the iPhone update. Yeah.
Right.
Overnight.
Exactly. It's like an update. But I always look at it that way because when you have these experiences, all of a sudden there's like a new opening. And now all of a sudden you have access to more information or more abilities. So I feel like we're just constantly going up this ladder because we are all part of this evolution of raising consciousness right now, right? Everybody working in that field are aware of that we're raising consciousness because when all we need is a few people, right? The leaders of this that are doing the research in consciousness, we are all connected to them, right? They raise their consciousness is going to affect us because remember how we're all connected.
Hmm.
So we're all part of raising our consciousness. And so we are gaining insight to having more abilities. And we're starting to understand these concepts of, you know, we're definitely not alone in the universe. It's a multiverse. And, we're having this conversation. I think 10, 20 years ago, that wasn't that common,
Sure.
right? People.
Well, besides the NDE, and I think at that, like, I think you're kind of picking up a different data stream at that point, right? Like, or a timeline. Have you done that? Have you seen a different timeline or a glitch in this simulation of virtual reality?
I think that we have access to different timelines. Like I've seen past lives in meditation. I don't know if I told you about that one last time. I saw the
Hmm.
past life in Southeast Asia.
I think so. I think
All
so.
right. I was a 10-year-old boy that lived with the monks.
Yes. Yes. That
Right.
was so interesting.
All
Yeah.
right. And that came through in a meditation. And I would see these places, but I saw people that I know from my current life there. So I knew that these buildings were still standing. But you're tapping into that was hundreds of years ago.
Sure.
But all of a sudden, I could get all that information, and then I had to do research and like, what is this? Why am I seeing this? I don't even know what it is or where it is in the world. And I had to do research to find that it was in Ayutthaya, it was in Southeast, like Thailand, and that was back in the 1600s, and put all those pieces together. And it wasn't until I ordered the book that I could then verify, and there was maps in there that showed the structure is exactly the way I had seen it. And I had, told my daughter and her boyfriend, because her boyfriend is Buddhist, And I said, hey, do you know anything about this? Like, I saw this Buddha statue and blah, blah, blah. I don't even know where it is. And he's like, I don't know. I don't know where it could be, but let's Google it and let's see if we can find it. And then found a book and then put the pieces together. But I think, number one, we've all had a lot of past lives, right? So you come into this life, but all those things that you did in past life, all those experiences, you're bringing that with you, and your soul remembers all those past lives. So you come into this life with the experience that you had from your past lives. When you think about how we say this kid has an old soul, we just know that. We just see, I don't know, this kid just
Hmm.
seems like an old soul, right? I'm sure that child has been around for a
How
long
would
time.
a brand new spanking new model soul like react to this reality coming in here? Like, I don't know. Like, I just feel like that'd be a huge shock for them.
Yeah. And, those might be people that struggle with fitting in because maybe they had a life long, long ago, but then they were on the other side for a while doing other things. And now they're
Sure.
coming back and they're
Different life
thinking, oh,
form, different being altogether.
yeah.
So it's interesting. I had a conversation with another near death experiencer, and she's in the healing game as well. But she says that like she has a practice, and sometimes her clients don't feel human. Like they may come in here as human like forms, but like when she's working on them, like she's gaining evidence of like, yeah, I don't know if you're supposed to be here. I
Yeah.
think, do you ever have like experiences
Yeah.
like that?
Yes. Sometimes, with like a walk-in also comes, I feel like those are the last minute assignments. Um, once some soul is backing out, taking another assignment, they come in and they just feel like they never belonged to their family, or they just feel like, I don't know, am I even from this planet? Right?
So you've had
Yeah.
clients like that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. They often say that. And who am I? And am I from a different planet? So when you think about it, I mean, what's that? Is there anything that says that we couldn't have had a past life on a different planet?
Sure.
And
No,
now
I
we're on this planet,
agree. I agree 100%. I
right?
think it's just consciousness. We're just
Yeah.
a vehicle for that. Like going back to AI, I think ultimately AI, if it is conscious, I just think it's our consciousness. Like we've built the body essentially, right? And
Yeah.
then, I mean, everybody's like, well, it's not human consciousness. It's not, it's consciousness. It's like, it is. I don't, I don't believe at the end of the day when my this vehicle passes that I will continue as Trey. I think something else will take its, like my awareness will probably still be there. Like we talked about your near death experience, you felt like yourself, like I think you said a cuss word, right? Like you're like, oh shit, like am I dead? Like so I
Right.
feel like that awareness will still be there, but I won't identify with the body. So what says that, consciousness is going to evolve and it's going to do that regardless, right? Like if it has to become an AI generated computer program, I think, at some point it may be conscious and aware, but I don't know. I just feel like it's just all consciousness. And who says the tree isn't conscious, right? Like even though my belief system says it's not, like I feel like they're conscious. They have a communication network that's underground in a root system,
Hmm.
just like mushrooms, just like the
Hmm.
grass. I mean, all of it really. I mean, it's, if it's all consciousness, if it's fundamentally all consciousness anyway, and we are the perceiver and the observer of that, and that's why this reality collapses upon that,
Hmm.
just from that awareness, that would make sense that everything is consciousness anyway, because I am the observer. So it goes from potentiality to actual, like a material observation.
Hmm. Right. So, right, like you're saying, the mushrooms are conscious, the trees are conscious. We we resonate and entrain with trees, for example. We resonate. You don't have to have a heart for us to connect and resonate with somebody else. So we resonate and entrain with everything that has a heart, right? Because it's an electromagnetic field, and you feel that if somebody's mad, right? You walk into a room and you can feel that anger, or you can feel that love coming from someone. But Stephen Harold Booner has written books and done research on that. I forget what the his book is, but he talks about how we resonate and entrain with like trees and flowers, whether it has a heart or not. It doesn't matter. We're still connected to that and we're still tuning into that. And the trees talk to each other. They warn each other there's a fire coming down the line, right? So they all have this whole communication in place, just like the mushrooms, the whole network underground, like Paul Stamets and the
Sure.
mushrooms and all that. The Fantastic Fungi, the movie, The Fantastic Fungi, right? It's
Yeah,
a, you understand when you look at that, when you see that movie, Fantastic Fungi, you realize, I mean, that's like the internet, the mushrooms internet, right? But
pretty crazy.
that is a whole, you're right. It's really crazy because it's a whole communication network. And
Mhm.
it's just like the internet sort of.
Sure. And it's kind of scary too, like, what we're doing to this planet. Like, I mean, so if it is a virtual reality, right? Like if I am creating this reality in front of me right now, like, and like, is Mother Earth conscious? Is Mother Ocean conscious? Like, is that a conscious being? Like,
Yeah, it is.
yeah.
So it's conscious. So everything is conscious. The earth is conscious because you have the perception of living on top of the earth, but you are part of the earth.
Do you think
You
she
are
has awareness of me, like, as an
right.
individual?
Right, because when you're looking, everything is a reflection. So go back to Indra's net. So every jewel on that net is a reflection of everything else. Now, if you look at your body, you have like billions of cells inside, right? You have red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and all these different cells. And you get different organs, right? And there's a whole network inside of you that's talking and making everything work. It makes you breathe, makes your heart beat, digest your food, you know, everything they do makes you sweat. So everything that happens in your body is part of that whole system. Now, you as a human being are part of the earth. So think of all the people on earth are just blood cells, like you have blood cells in your body. We're part of the earth. We're all connected to each other on the earth. But the different continents, I mean, you can look at, you have a heart, you got kidneys, liver, lungs, spleen, right? Now look at the continents. We got Africa, Australia, Europe, United States. All right. Now within within the United States, let's say that's the liver. You got all the people living in the United States. They're all cells to the United States. Well, your body has the liver. You got all these different cells inside your liver, the liver cells and all the other cells. Right. But so see how everything is just a mirror of everything else that exists. So everything that exists in you, but then you are that one cell to Earth. Now, Earth is that one cell to that galaxy. That galaxy is part of the next galaxy. So everything is just like a large hologram of existence,
Oh, that's some
right?
trippy stuff right there.
Here it is.
Now, before I go down this rabbit hole, right? You said a lot of important things, being connected. And during your near-death experience, you said that you had some spirit guides, you saw some angels, and I'm assuming it kind of similar to what you just said, like we are connected to those as well.
Right, of course. So we all have spirit guides, right? And the way I look at it is we have the main spirit guide that is helping us be the person what we came to do in this life, like our main spirit guide is kind of keeping us on track. But then you have spirit guides that come and go and help you with different things. Um, so when you're doing something, maybe writing a book like I did, I knew somebody was helping me, and then I found out from having a reading when I was training as a medium over in England that, and she said, well, there's somebody, you're writing a book. And I said, yeah, I am. And she said, somebody's helping you with that book in the spirit world. And I said, yeah. But I'm not sure who it is. It was just when I started training as a medium. And she said, oh, it's somebody who passed away too young. This person studied English in college, but never worked with it. And that's the person I said, who I know who it is my brother-in-law. He died in a car accident and he was in his early 40s and he was an English major, but he never got to work as an English professor because there was no job. So he worked in something else. And, so we all have, and I knew somebody was helping me, but I couldn't, it's like, where am I getting this information? Is it coming from my head? Is it coming from out there? Right. Cause I was just learning to tune into it. But sometimes we think that it's just our gut or, it's just our brain. But maybe it's your uncle, you're fixing your car and then he was a car mechanic and he's like, no, you can't do it this way. You got to do it this way. Get the other tool. And then you feel really proud because you figured out how to do it. But really, he was tapping you on your shoulder saying, you're doing it wrong. Do it this way.
That's
Right.
so cool. Yeah, I always look at like a spirit guide. Like, I don't know, I have this idea, this concept. It's like Gandalf the Grey, like with the staff and like the beard and the hood and all of that, right? Like what do spirit guides really look like? I mean, you caught a good
I mean, it
glimpse of
could be
yours.
it could be your relative, right? That's
Yeah.
coming in, right?
Yeah.
It could
So it
be your
could just be
relative
a
that's helping
relative.
you. Yeah. Or it could be a friend. It could be somebody you've never seen, but that person, comes in and says, oh, you got to do this. Let's say your house is on fire and, somebody's coming in, the fireman up there says, oh, I got to go save them. It's not their time yet. So he comes and whispers in your ear, do this, open this door, do that. And you just do it, right? Automatically. And you get everybody to safety. But it was really your spirit guide that guided you, because then afterwards you're thinking about, how did I know how to do that? I've never done this before. I've never trained in this, but I just instinctively knew that this is the right way to get everybody to safety, right? So maybe that was your spirit guide coming in and feeding that information, saying, oh, we got to avoid this accident. They're not supposed to die yet. So let's get them to safety, right? Because
Okay.
they're always, these spirit guides come and go all the time. They're helping us, but we just don't see them because we have this illusion that we are all separate and we're not dependent and we're independent. We're not related, the ancestors that passed away 100 years ago, it's not affecting us. And,
Hmm.
it's an illusion that we have to have this earthly experience.
Can you feel the veil right now? Can you feel it?
Feel
Like, is this something like that you can feel? Like, I know we talk about it, right? Like as a metaphor, maybe of not being able to observe the non-physical or feel it or sense it, but can you feel it? Like, do you know that it's there?
the veil.
Hmm.
Well, so like when I work as a medium, you typically, like if I'm doing mediumship that day, I will sit in meditation that morning and a little extra long, to establish connections with the spirit world. But when we're going through, sometimes people think that when you're just going through your normal day, it's like, oh, I can start talking to the spirit world like at any second, right? But it takes, you have to tune into that and, reach that.
So it's like the radio
Some people
station.
look at it like, we raise our frequency, they lower their frequency, and it's a good way to look at it. But you can also just say, depending on who you're talking to, some mediums, I've interviewed a lot of my teachers on my podcast as well, and it depends who you ask, right? So if you're teaching mediumship and that student is trying to reach, sitting there meditating, trying to get to that level, that frequency where they're going to tune in, they're never going to get a connection because they're too much in their mind trying to get to that frequency. It's more about just relaxing. It's almost like tuning inwards rather than tuning outwards,
Mm.
because it's about just relaxing. So when I taught mediumship, I'm not currently I'm not teaching it, but when I taught mediumship, I would always tell the students, think of yourself as being at a kindergarten party. You're at a birthday party, you're playing this game, and you're just here to have fun, see if you can make a connection. Because it's more about relaxing and just tuning in. As soon as you start trying, nothing is going to work because your mind gets in the way, and you sort of have to learn to get rid of the mind and just let things come naturally. So the more you relax, the more you just meditate and float away in space and have a good time and just relax, that's when you're going to open up.
Mm.
That's when you're going to start hearing the spirit world or seeing things or hearing things, because the more effort you put into trying, the more you're hindering that.
Sure. Are there rules of engagement on the other side? Like what they can and cannot do?
I don't know. That's a good question. Do they
Let's
have
take it to the
limits?
guides. Let's
Right?
tune in.
Do they have limits on the other side? I don't know if they have limits on the other side. I mean, I think they're busy on the other side. I think they have their own life on the other side, maybe preparing for the next life.
I think they just
Right.
gave me that question to ask you. They were like, they just
Right.
nudged my spirit guide nudged me a little bit
Right.
and popped that bad boy in my brain.
Right.
Um, yeah, I think, to your point, I think the more we try, the less we receive. I think it's more of a letting go and surrendering and then
Yeah.
listening to that small, 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 quiet voice that comes up that you still kind of like deny because your imagination has always been, uh, viewed upon as something negative or that small voice is, people tell you not to listen to it because you're crazy. But
Yeah.
I think, when I go to that place and meditate and, things come, messages come, they feel right. And then I think the important part too is like to ask for a sign, like, just say, verify this, you know. But then that kind of makes me nervous too, because like, what if, we are the creators of this reality, and like, you know, because I don't have any hesitancy or resistance to creating something like that. I manifest it in my reality. So like if I say, hey, and this is just me having like I don't know, a rant in my head right now, but it's like, all right, I go into that small space and I listen to a message, and I say, all right, I need to see a sign. Let's see a blue jay today, right? Um, if this message really resonates with me, if this message is true and accurate to who I am, and I need to pursue this, let me see a blue jay. I'll give you 24 hours, right? Because we are creators, like, do we have the capability to manifest that because we have no resistance to that, right? Like, let's say if I have a subconscious, limitation to creating $1,000 because of all the programming and trauma, like that's going to be very hard to manifest because of that subconscious blocking. But if I have no subconscious blocking or resistance to creating a blue jay in my reality, I actually manifest it. Like, does that make sense to you? Like, I always think about that. Like, if we are creators,
Mhm.
um, could we, subconsciously create something because of the resistance? Like if there is no resistance, it's easily creatable in our reality. But if there's a lot of resistance to it, I won't be able to make it.
Right. I mean, if you're living in Vermont and it's in January and it's really snowing, and you ask to see a spring flower in the snow, you're probably not going to see it, even if you try to manifest it. You know what I'm saying? So I think, is it, can we manifest it because, what we think, comes into matter? But it, it's more complicated than that, because if that was true, I know this whole room would be filled with millions of dollars. I would be sitting there going, please let me manifest $1 million
Why would
tonight.
you
And
want
I
$1
say,
million though? Like that's out of
right,
curiosity, right? Like why would Dr.
right.
Lottie need $1 million?
I don't know, but that's just, and something that everybody always wishes they win on lottery, or they win $1 million, right? So that then they're going to have this easy life and they have no worries. But it never works like that, because then you get other worries. And if you win $1 million, now you have other problems. But if we could just manifest things by thinking about it, then we would just manifest money or manifest anything we want.
Do you
I want
think
to
we can manifest
manifest.
though? Do you think we
Huh?
can? Do you think we can manifest
I
though?
think we can manifest certain things, but we can't just, manifest. You can't become a physician by watching television and sitting on the couch. You actually have to go to med school to do it, right? There's obstacles, there's hurdles you have to overcome, because this is the reality we live in, right? So things aren't there until we observe it, according to physics, right? The electrons
Hmm.
going through the slits. But can we just, if I say, if this is true, then let me see a lion in my backyard tomorrow. I don't think it's going to happen. I live in the
But
middle of
what if that
Phoenix.
line is like a little sticker? You know what I mean? Like a little
You know what I'm
kid, like a
saying?
toy. Like I found
Right?
that. I found that for myself. Like I
Right.
asked for a blue jay. Like this is a real
Mm,
life example, guys.
yeah.
I asked, I actually, you know what? I didn't even ask. I was like, show me a sign in 24 hours if this is the right choice."
Hmm.
And a blue jay popped into my head. I don't know why. I'm not a Blue Jays fan. I'm not from
Hmm.
Canada. Like I rarely see blue jays. And sure enough, I'm driving down the road, and I live in Baltimore, and there's Johns Hopkins, they're Blue Jays, right? And I see the Blue Jay van driving down the road. It's not
Hmm.
a literal Blue Jay, a physical, animal.
Yeah.
It's the mascot of the college,
Right.
right?
Hmm.
So to me, right, like being the mystic, or not mystic, but the spiritual seeker that I am, I take that
Hmm.
as the sign. But then there's
Yeah.
also the skeptic inside of me that's saying, man, you just manifested that in your reality. Don't take it, leave the gods alone, essentially. That's what Chardin says, or however you say his name, Chardin, um, because he was a big skeptic on signs. He
Hmm.
was like,
Hmm.
leave the gods alone. This is all chance. This is just, whatever. But the spiritual seeker inside of me is putting a lot of emphasis on that sign, because like, come on, man. Like I'm driving down the highway and I see the Johns Hopkins Blue Jay van. Come on. What is the probability of that happening?
Yeah. And that's what you asked for. And so that's often how the spirit world works, right? They're going to give you that sign that you're asking for. And sometimes it could be something really silly, like a pink elephant. you know, the pink elephants don't exist, but then you see a billboard with a pink elephant, right? So it can be something really silly, but you're going to see it in a movie. You're like, you're watching a Disney movie with your kids, and there's that, you know, orange giraffe, or, you know, something just that doesn't really exist. So it's true. That is how the spirit world comes back, because what are the odds that something that specifically that you asked for, that was going to be a chance? Right. So
Hmm.
that is the spirit world. That's your spirit guide saying, all right, let's give him confirmation. He needs confirmation of this. Right. So it's, you know, looking for these signs and then using those signs as a saying, okay, well, I'm going to go with that then, because there is the proof that that was the right decision.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I'm a big, for everyone listening, I'm a huge advocate for signs just because there's been just too many of them in my life that have been meaningful for me. Like I just, of course, there's a skeptic, a healthy piece of me that is skeptical of things. And I think you have to have that just for some instances, right? However, once you have enough evidence, you make your decision based upon that. And I have a lot of evidence that links to me making the right decision based on those signs. So I always suggest to people to really do their own experimentation with that and just be, open-minded and, have a little healthy dose of skepticism, but then also don't be afraid to take the leap of faith sometimes because I feel like the body, we have evolved over time. We are social creatures, so we have evolved over time to stay in our comfort zones. And so when you do something that's outside of your comfort zone, you're going to have a natural reaction in the body. Like when I make decisions, like based on my business that I have built, um, and it's like, oh man, I'm making an investment on the company here and I am not comfortable. That's the old program running, right? I'm going to be smart and calculate the risk and all of that. However, I know that it's a healthy investment for the company. However, I'm going to go do it anyway. But there is a reaction in the body that's like, oh, there's a program running of scarcity, of lack, right? Like I can feel it coming in. But it's like courage. I heard a beautiful quote today, and I'm gonna mess it up, but it's like, ugh, courage is not not having fear. It's feeling the fear and still doing that action, right?
Yeah.
I mean, you still
Hmm.
got to be smart about it.
Hmm.
However, the body is going to show and represent fear that has been programmed in your life, that has been put there through trauma, through experience, and it's going to pop up and it's going to try to keep it safe because that's what the body does. It's how we evolved. It's how we survived centuries of lions, tigers, and bears. And does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, because your soul remembers, your brain remembers, right? Your own experiences in your lifetime, your limbic system remembers, oh, when last time I had this smell, that meant danger, right? So next time you have that smell, it's going to just trigger, because your brain is meant to keep you safe and get you safety. That's what it does.
Yeah.
And so you have all these memories, so you just react automatically, right? If you've been in a situation, last time I was in this situation, this is what happened. Get yourself to safety. But then also you have your soul memories of your past lives, right? That is also helping you, react and act in certain ways. So it's all, it's all connected.
Sure. Yeah. Like, that's so fascinating. Um, I do want to ask you about the angel that you saw or angels. Do you know or can you explain or describe what they look like?
So when I stood in the light, so I saw this bright white light, which I knew was source, and heard this beautiful music. And then there was, it's like if you took a cloud and put a spotlight on it, and then you drew the outline of these angels, right, in that cloud. So there was no facial features. It was an outline that was just like the silhouette of the angels. And my thought was, I'm seeing angels. The music is coming from the angels, but I don't believe in angels. Like, why am I seeing angels? So it's really fascinating, because you are still you in this state, right? I'm outside my body. I'm having this spiritual experience, and I'm looking what I'm experiencing. I'm saying, but I don't believe in it, because, but I know that that was really important for me, because I was a complete atheist. I didn't believe in any of this. And so if I had believed in angels, I would have said, oh, it's because I believe in it. That's my brain went there by itself because I believe in angels. I wanted it to be this way. And that's why. And I would have just said, okay, it's just the brain, it's just science. But I saw things that I didn't believe. And so it really threw me for a loop because I'm like, why? What is this? Why am I seeing stuff that I don't believe exists? But that was the experience I had to have in order to go down this spiritual path and then keep investigating it more and more and more and then turn into who I am today. Right. That was just my journey versus somebody else that, has a belief in God and Jesus and angels, and they've been going to church their whole life. Now they have a near death experience and they see God, Jesus, and the angels that I have been learning about since they were 3 years old. I would then look at them and say, well, of course, that's what you're going to see. That's your experience. That's
Sure.
your life, right? And so I think that's, was important for me to have an experience that of seeing things and hearing things I didn't believe because
Oh,
it had to change me. It was something that had to change me so that I would be on the right path.
yeah. I wonder what like cultures that don't grow up in the dogma. Like if someone has, I don't know. I wonder sometimes like what a Native American would experience with a near death, or an Aborigine from a totally different culture, right? Like how they would experience a near death experience if they were to have one. Like what would they experience? You know what I mean? Like would they
Yeah.
experience like Mother Earth or like the great spirits, the elements, like as
I think
opposed
the
to
experiences are similar across cultures, from what I remember. I know they've done, actually, there's a lot of research on that. I don't remember who did the research, but this experiences are similar regardless of religious background. So, but then, there are times too when, if people grew up in a completely different religion, they're going to see things that relates to their religion. But I also think that the things that we see and the things we experience is based on our own experience in life. Like the first thing I saw, I heard the music and I saw the log cabins, and I always laugh at that. Growing up in Sweden, I mean, in log cabins, there was little saunas, right? And that was something that was comfortable for me to see versus somebody else, that grows up in South America. Maybe they or grow up, closer to the uh, living more rural. Maybe they're seeing different things or things from their culture, right? So I think there is some cultural element, but the overall experience, I think, is very similar regardless of cultures. But yeah, look into it because I know they've done research on it.
sure, for sure. You said something about seeing, like I saw in your profile like oracle or seer. Like, do you have that capability too? Like being able to, like, what does that look like? Do you help clients with that? Do you like foresee things happening?
So like seeing things or like being like
Yeah,
they
like you
say
said,
I'm like an
seer, the
oracle.
oracle. Like, what
Right.
exactly is an oracle?
So, I would say so my teacher described, one of my teachers described me as that because he knows that when I meditate, I can go really high, into your like universal consciousness and access information, right? So and I think a lot of people that are deep meditators, right? And I've been meditating for over 30 years now. So when you go into that deep meditation, you learn to access the higher consciousness. So if I ask you a question now,
Hmm.
uh, who is God?
Hmm. You, me, I don't know.
Right? So you're gonna have an answer because it's coming from your brain. Then if I tell you, all right, now I want you to close your eyes, sit in meditation for 5 minutes. We're gonna ask your higher consciousness. We're gonna ask the same question. You're gonna sit in meditation for 5 minutes, and I'm gonna say, all right, now that you're sitting in meditation, I'm just sitting across from you, waiting for you to sit in meditation for 5 minutes. And I say, tell me what your higher consciousness says about God. Who's God? And then you tell me something completely different than you did the first time. And I said, right, keep sitting in meditation. Now I want you to go to universal consciousness. And I want you to ask universal consciousness or divine source, who's God? And you're going to give me another answer. And because the deeper you go into meditation, the more you get away from that brain, you're going to have different answers. And you can do this, with your kids, your friends, your wife, or whatever. You can ask any question, what is life? What is the meaning of life? And then write down the answer. The brain says, all right, sit in meditation. Now we ask the higher consciousness. Now we ask divine source or universal consciousness. You're going to get different answers but you
Hmm.
ask the same person the same question because they're in a different frequency accessing that information. But it's fascinating because the answers get deeper and deeper when you do this exercise. And the person doesn't even realize it because you give that answer, you feel like, well, I feel really smart. That's, of course, it's this. That's just your brain, right? But then when you go out there and you really start accessing that information, you get completely different answers
What
and
is, and I hate to
deeper.
say highest or deepest, but like what level of consciousness were you able to tap into that was, I don't know, if you want to call it the highest, like
I
what
don't
was
know.
the
I call it
highest?
universal. For me, it's universal consciousness. You're getting just to a higher level. My brain is just a peanut compared to everybody's brain is just a peanut. We're just stuck in this body. We are so busy just staying alive. I mean, you got to make sure that nobody's barging into your room, that you're not going to be eaten alive right now, or that a fire alarm's going to go off. I mean, your brain is just scanning the whole time. It's so busy keeping you safe and alive. But then you go into these meditative states. That's when you start accessing other realities, other dimensions, because you're quieting down this very chatty brain.
Sure.
Mm.
What consists mostly of your work today? Like what are you most involved in? Like is it the
Yeah.
mediumship? Is it the healing? Like what is that?
Yeah. So my work today, I work as a medical medium, so I help a lot of people, like a medical intuitive, medical medium. I always work with the spirit world, so it's more like a medical medium, but people are more familiar with medical intuitive. Um, and help people that fall through the cracks. They might go, come and say, like they have the allergies or whatever, and it's something completely different. Um, so I do a lot of medical intuitive readings. Then I do messages from your spirit guides, and so I see the spirit world, and so when I do that, it's always the main spirit guide that comes in because we all have a bunch of spirit guides, but it's the main spirit guide. And the way I look at it is once I see that spirit guide, and then I in 5 minutes I just make it like really quick sketch so that people have an idea like what I'm seeing,
Really? You
and I
make a sketch of it.
right a very quick sketch, and it like takes like 5 or 6 minutes. Just get a quick sketch, and then I see that spirit guide. But now I know a lot about the client because the spirit guide, I talk to the spirit guide, but you're kind of a reflection of that main spirit guide because that main spirit guide is helping you do your main thing that you're here to do in this life. And so different, information comes through. It's really fun. It's kind of a fun session. Many times, not many of us know why we're here. It's like, why am I here? Right. And I know why I'm here, but that's my job to help other people with that.
Find their
Right.
purpose. Yeah.
Right. And so I'm here as a healer, I'm here as a medium, and I'm here to help people heal. I'm here to help people find their path. So I do that session. Then I do a lot of ancestral healing. So that interconnectedness that we have to our ancestors. Why is it that? So I just taught a class at the Theosophical Society this past weekend about stepping into your own power, right? Self realization. Why is it that some people can't step into that? They get the promotion gets passed up, they get passed by, other people get promoted. They've been there longer, have more experience. Why is it that they can't get that promotion? What's holding them back, right? So all these different issues. But ancestral healing could be anything because many times it's either comes from your own childhood or it comes from your ancestors. So do a lot of that. I would say those are the main sessions I do is medical media, messages from spirit guides, ancestral healing, and then also do mediumship readings for people connecting with a loved one in the spirit world. But that's also, people, we are not in charge of saying who is going to come in. So if you sign up for mediumship and say, I want to talk to my mom,
Hmm.
well, it's not for sure your mom's going to come in. I have no control over that, right? We, most of the time, if the person says, I really want to connect with my mom, the mom is going to come in, but it doesn't mean she's going to come in because we're not in charge. And, sometimes it's one person that comes through right away and says, you already know this is the person, right? Oh, do you have a husband in the spirit world? Because I have a man here and blah, 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 right?
Hmm.
And and that's the main purpose of that session. But other times it could be, everybody wants to chime in. So mom is there, grandma's there, sister is there, right? And everybody has a little piece of something they want to tell that person. so that's also, something I do, so mediumship. And then I do something called wholehearted. And that is when you don't know what you want, except for mediumship. Mediumship is just mediumship. But the wholehearted, it can be a little bit of everything. Sometimes people have, well, I have, just a few questions about, you know, my medical diagnosis. Is there, what are you tuning into something else? But I also want to know how do I connect with the spirit world, or how do I tune into, becoming more intuitive and more psychic in my abilities. So it could be anything.
Mm.
So that's kind of like the wholehearted. It can go in all different directions in one session. So a
Man.
little bit of everything.
Yeah, what's that saying? A la carte, like almost like everything is
Right.
rolled in there. Yeah.
Right.
Wow. I can't believe like the time. I feel like we're in that space of like outside of time when we talk because it just goes by so quickly. I just have such a great time talking to you. Remind everyone where they can find your work, where they can connect with you, and the name of your podcast.
Right. So my website is drlotte.com. It says DRLOTTE.com. And, if you're interested, if people are interested in working with me, there you just look at the different types of sessions, and then you book and schedule and pay. Everything is online, so it's very easy. And the other question was
Your podcast, what's
the
that?
podcast. The podcast is Dr. Lottie Science with Soul. And I interview a lot of different people. It could be anything from a doctor, counselor, psychologist to a shaman or a medium,
Uh-oh. Yeah.
but it's everything that has to do with creating a path to healing your own life,
Hmm.
or finding a way through your life. And I often interview people that people aren't aware of those medical modalities or those types of diseases, because those are the people that fall through the cracks. And
Hmm.
so I on purpose bring those people on the podcast so that people will, know, oh my gosh, that's my sister, or that's me, or that's my mom. And now they know what to do just by listening to that podcast. So
Sure.
helping people find a way to create healing.
Hmm. I love that. Um, Last question. So when you're doing, you said you draw the spirit guides. Do you see them like in your physical reality when you're speaking to them and the relatives, like, or do you see that through your third eye?
So I see an image of the spirit guide, or I see an image of the people in the spirit world.
Like, and so I'm assuming you close your eyes and do that, or do you kind of,
No, it's just they're just like right here. So
so you
they're
see
always,
an image, like is it like
yeah.
translucent? Like, is it kind of like, because I'm
No,
very
it's like,
fascinated.
right. It's more like a slideshow. I think everybody has different experiences. But if I do a mediumship reading, it's more like a slideshow. So it's just an image, like split second of, it's almost like they're standing on the other side throwing darts, and these darts have images on them. And they're just like, oh, she caught it. Okay. No, she didn't catch it. She didn't catch it. Let me do it again. And sometimes, you see something or hear something and you're thinking, wow, what was that? Can you do that again? You have to ask. You see the same thing again. You're like, okay, I get it. That's really what you want me to say. Okay, here we go. And of course, it always resonates with the client, but sometimes you feel crazy because your brain is trying to make sense of it, right? But it doesn't always make sense. And your job is just to say what you see, feel, and hear, because the spirit world knows what they're doing,
Hmm.
right? And so I'm just the messenger, right? Relaying what I see, feel, and hear. And that's the work, that's the job of any medium or psychic, is just to, it doesn't necessarily make sense to us. Because all of a sudden you'll see something crazy. You kind of, why am I seeing pine trees? Or we were talking about, this other thing, and all of a sudden they're talking about something else. But then it always makes sense to the person,
Sure.
right? Like all of a sudden they'll say, I see you dancing in the living room with your husband. Does that make sense? And they're like, yes, I was a dance teacher when I was young. And I used to have, my husband used to be my partner. I used to practice on him all the time. Right.
Hmm.
And so it's like, there's like specific things, or uh, um, I see all these wildflowers, but there's a specific wildflower, and it says blue wildflower. Hold on a second. He wants me to look it up. So I put into Google wildflowers. It comes up seed packet. So I turn the computer around and I say, this is what I'm seeing. Does this make sense to you? And it says seed packet of wildflower. The person just looks at me and says, My husband planted a wildflower seed pack before he passed away, but he never got to see the flowers.
Wow.
There it is. So all of a sudden, like you're seeing these things out of the blue that doesn't make any sense. You're thinking, what is this? But your job is just to relay that information, and then it makes perfect sense to that client.
Sure.
But that is, that's how mediumship works. It doesn't make any sense to you. You're thinking sometimes you're crazy. Like all of a sudden, it's out of context. Something else comes in, and you're just completely changing gears. But that's something important to
Mm.
that person, right?
Do
And
you
it
ever
also
have
proves.
do you ever have out of body experiences?
Not except for my near-death experiences.
Okay. Because I was going to ask what the difference is, right? Like you always hear about the out of body experiences and then the near death. I didn't know if there was like a distinction between the two, or maybe they're just one and the same. Just one's a little bit more
Yeah,
extreme.
I think it's, I mean, people who have done those like psilocybin or, different types of things, ayahuasca experiences and things like that. I know Eben Alexander, the brain surgeon from
Hmm.
Harvard that was in a coma, had near death experience. I think he was part of a research study, and he said it was very different because they wanted to see if his experience when taking these hallucinogenic substances would create a similar experience.
But
But he said it was
replicate,
very,
yeah.
yeah, it was very different. He said it was very different. So who knows?
Who knows? I mean,
Who knows
ultimately,
what,
who knows, right?
right? Exactly. We don't know. Exactly.
Dr. Lottie, this has been awesome. I always love talking to you. You're such a great like conversationalist, and your stories are just so amazing. So thank you so much for taking the time again for the third time, three-peat. Thank you so much.
Right. So welcome. It's a pleasure.